The story of humanity is one of extraordinary resilience. It's a tale of survival against incredible odds. But if we travel back in time, far beyond recorded history, we find a moment when our story almost ended before it truly began. Around 900,000 years ago, our ancient ancestors faced a catastrophic event. Their numbers dwindled so dramatically that they were pushed to the very brink of extinction. It's honestly a startling thought that the entire future of our species, the future that led to us today, was held in the balance dependent on the survival of a tiny, fragile group. This near disaster, a severe population bottleneck, would profoundly shape the course of human evolution in ways we're only now beginning to comprehend. This perilous period occurred during a time of immense environmental upheaval known as the mid-Pleistocene transition. The world was becoming a much harsher and more unpredictable place to live. Glaciation events, once less frequent, became more intense and prolonged. Vast ice sheets expanded across the northern continents, locking up enormous amounts of water and altering global weather patterns. This led to severe, long-lasting droughts in Africa and Eurasia, the very heartlands of our ancestors. The lush, resource-rich environments that had supported them for millennia began to vanish, replaced by arid landscapes where food and water were dangerously scarce. For our ancient relatives, the world was rapidly becoming an inhospitable and unforgiving home. Imagine for a moment the struggle these early humans faced each day. The predictable rhythms of nature which they had relied upon for generations were gone. Rivers dried up, forests receded, and the herds of animals they hunted either migrated or disappeared entirely. Survival would have been a relentless daily challenge, requiring immense ingenuity and cooperation. Each sunrise brought with it the desperate search for sustenance and the constant threat of starvation. It was a time of great suffering and loss, a crucible that tested the limits of their endurance. Only the most adaptable and perhaps the most fortunate would have been able to withstand such a prolonged period of extreme hardship. This was not a brief crisis, but a long, drawn-out ordeal. Scientists believe this severe climatic downturn lasted for well over 100,000 years. For countless generations, our ancestors lived on a knife's edge. The world they knew had fundamentally changed, and they had to change with it or perish. The pressure was immense, a relentless force shaping their very existence. This long winter of humanity forced our ancestors into small, isolated groups, each fighting for its own survival. It was in this desperate, challenging environment that the stage was set for a dramatic chapter in our evolutionary story, one that would leave a permanent mark on all who came after. How can we possibly know about a crisis that happened so long ago, a time from which no written records survive? The answer, remarkably, lies hidden within us all. It's written in the very fabric of our being, our DNA. By studying the genetic makeup of modern humans from diverse populations across the globe, scientists can act as genetic archaeologists. They can look back in time, tracing our shared ancestry through the subtle variations in our genetic code. Advanced statistical models allow them to estimate population sizes at different points in our deep past. It's through this incredible window into history that the story of this ancient bottleneck has been revealed. This genetic investigation, a new technique called FitCoal, has provided the most compelling evidence for this near-extinction event. By analyzing the genomes of thousands of people today, researchers detected a dramatic gap in our ancestral lineage. They found that for a period of about 117,000 years, beginning around 930,000 years ago, the breeding population of our ancestors crashed. The numbers are truly staggering. The population is estimated to have fallen to just 1,280 breeding individuals. This tiny group, scattered across a vast and hostile landscape, was all that stood between our lineage and complete annihilation. They were the sole guardians of humanity's future. Such a drastic reduction in population size has a profound effect on genetic diversity. When a population is large and thriving, it contains a vast library of genetic variations. But when it shrinks to such a small number, most of that variation is lost forever, simply by chance. The few survivors carry only a small fraction of the original genetic richness. This is precisely what scientists see when they look at our DNA. Compared to our closest living relatives, like chimpanzees, modern humans are remarkably similar to one another genetically. This ancient bottleneck is the primary reason for our relatively low genetic diversity, an echo of a time when our ancestors were perilously few. The consequences of this loss are significant. A diverse gene pool provides the raw material for adaptation, allowing a species to better respond to new diseases or changing environments. Our ancestors survived this crisis, but the genetic slate was partially wiped clean. As the population eventually recovered and began to expand again, it did so from a much narrower genetic foundation. Every single person alive today is a descendant of this small group of survivors. The story of their struggle and their ultimate triumph is therefore not just the story of ancient history, it's our story, imprinted in the DNA of every cell in our bodies. The evidence for this ancient struggle is not only found in our genes, it's also suggested by what is missing. The fossil record from this specific period in our past is strangely quiet. For the time between about 950,000 and 650,000 years ago, particularly in Africa and Eurasia, there is a conspicuous gap in the discovery of early human fossils. While we have fossils from before this period and many from after, this window of time appears almost empty. This puzzling scarcity of remains has long been a source of debate among paleontologists, an unexplained silence in the epic story of human evolution. This gap in the fossil record aligns remarkably well with the timeline of the genetic bottleneck. It's a case of two independent lines of evidence pointing to the same dramatic conclusion. A population of only a few thousand individuals, scattered thinly across a massive continent, would leave behind very few traces. The chances of any single individual's remains being preserved through fossilization are already incredibly slim. When the total population is so small, the likelihood of finding any fossils from that time becomes almost zero. The silence in the stone is not a failure of discovery. It is likely the ghostly testament to a population that was barely there. This lack of physical evidence paints a somber picture. It reinforces the idea of a world where human ancestors were rare, clinging to survival in isolated pockets of habitability. They were not the dominant creatures of their landscape. Instead, they were a minor part of the fauna, struggling against the overwhelming forces of climate change. The fossil gap serves as a form of negative evidence, its emptiness speaking volumes about the severity of the crisis. It reminds us that our journey has not been a steady, inexorable march of progress, but a fragile and contingent path, with moments of profound vulnerability and near disaster. The few who survived this long ordeal would have been subjected to intense selective pressures. In such a small, isolated group, genetic changes can spread much more quickly than in a large population. This period of intense struggle may have been a powerful engine for evolutionary change. The very conditions that threatened to wipe our ancestors out may have also forged them into something new, something more resilient and adaptable. The end of this bottleneck was not just a recovery. It appears to have been a new beginning, marked by the emergence of a new kind of human on the world stage. Out of the crucible of this near-extinction event, a new chapter in the human story began. As the climate slowly started to improve and our ancestors' numbers began to rebound, we see the emergence of a new and significant hominin species in the fossil record, Homo heidelbergensis. Many scientists now believe that this species may be the common ancestor of both Neanderthals in Europe and our own species, Homo sapiens in Africa. It's thought that the severe bottleneck event, with its intense evolutionary pressures and genetic drift, may have played a crucial role in the speciation event that gave rise to these larger-brained, more sophisticated humans. Homo heidelbergensis was different. They had larger brains than their predecessors, and they developed more advanced stone tool technologies. They were skilled hunters, capable of bringing down large game, and there's evidence that they were the first to build simple shelters. This new species was better equipped to deal with the challenges of a fluctuating world. The genetic bottleneck may have cleared the way for new traits to become established, accelerating the pace of evolution. The survivors and their immediate descendants were not just lucky, they were the architects of a new kind of humanity, one that would eventually spread across the entire planet. Understanding this ancient bottleneck is profoundly important for how we see ourselves today. It highlights the fragility of our existence and the remarkable fact that we are all descended from a tiny handful of survivors. This shared perilous past is a fundamental part of what makes us human. It explains our surprising lack of genetic diversity and underscores how closely related we all are. Every human population on Earth shares this common heritage, a legacy of survival against unimaginable odds. It's a humbling reminder that for a long and desperate time, the future of humanity depended on just a few thousand individuals. The story of the bottleneck is therefore a story of both crisis and creativity. It shows how close we came to vanishing forever, but it also reveals our incredible capacity for endurance and adaptation. The pressures that nearly destroyed our ancestors also helped to forge the very traits that would eventually allow our species to thrive and populate every corner of the globe. It's a powerful reminder that in the grand theatre of evolution, moments of greatest peril can also be moments of greatest opportunity. Our presence here today is a testament to the resilience of those few ancient survivors who weathered the storm and carried the flame of human consciousness forward into a new dawn.